He saved a girl from the wreckage after an accident, but when he saw the photo in her hand, he started crying uncontrollably. Douglas Reed tapped his fingers on the steering wheel. His watch showed 6:47 p.m., and he had been stuck in that traffic jam for over an hour. Through the window of his imported car, the lights in the buildings began to come on against the darkening sky. Another deal closed, he thought, glancing at the leather briefcase on the passenger seat. That agreement would be worth millions for his company, but Douglas felt nothing but a familiar exhaustion. The radio announced an accident up ahead as the cause of the congestion. Douglas sighed and adjusted his tie. When the phone rang, he answered without checking the number. "Reed," he said in a firm, professional voice. "Mr. Reed, just confirming the reservation for tomorrow night's dinner with the Japanese investors." "Yes, I'll be there. Let them know I want the reports ready beforehand." Douglas hung up and noticed that the cars in front of him were starting to move. Finally, he moved forward slowly, steering away from the lane blocked by orange cones and flashing emergency lights. Police officers gestured, directing traffic. That's when he saw the accident. A small car had flipped over and crashed against a utility pole. The other vehicle involved was less damaged, with its driver being treated on the sidewalk. Something made Douglas slow down even more, a strange feeling like an invisible pull. He should keep going like all the other drivers, but the officer signaled for him to continue, but Douglas saw something that made him come to a complete stop. Movement inside the overturned car. Someone was still in there. "Sir, you need to keep moving," the officer shouted, walking closer. "There's someone in the car," Douglas pointed out, already opening his own door. "The rescue team is on its way," but Douglas was already out, walking quickly toward the accident. A firefighter was trying to pry open the crushed door, with no success. "I can help," Douglas said, removing his suit jacket. "Sir, you shouldn't—" Douglas crouched and saw through the shattered glass. A little girl, still strapped into her seatbelt. She was conscious, her eyes wide with fear. Blood trickled from a cut on her forehead. "We're going to get you out of there," Douglas said, trying to keep his voice calm. The firefighter nodded, recognizing the determination on Douglas's face. "The door's jammed. We have to try through the window." Together, they worked to widen the opening in the broken glass. Douglas cut his hand, but barely felt the pain. Adrenaline coursed through his veins as he stretched to reach the seatbelt latch. "What's your name?" he asked the girl. She looked at him with big, frightened eyes. "Nina," she whispered. "Nina, I'm Douglas. I'm going to get you out of here, okay?" The girl nodded slightly. Douglas managed to unfasten the belt and, with the firefighter's help, carefully pulled her out. The smell of gasoline filled the air. They needed to get away quickly. Douglas carried Nina in his arms. She was light, fragile. A cut on her forehead, some scratches, and she seemed to have hurt her arm. But she was alive. "My dad," Nina murmured. "Where's my dad?" Douglas looked at the firefighter, who shook his head slightly. The driver, presumably the girl's father, was being treated urgently by paramedics a few yards away. The situation didn't look good. "They're taking care of him," Douglas replied, carrying her away from the car. A small pink bag was strapped to the girl's body. As Douglas carried her, the bag opened and something fell to the ground. "My photo!" Nina exclaimed, trying to turn around. Douglas carefully bent down, still holding her, and picked up what looked like a photograph. In the quick motion, his eyes flicked over the picture and his heart stopped. A smiling woman was hugging the same girl who was now in his arms, a woman he knew very well. Monica, his sister. Douglas almost stumbled. He looked again at the photo, then at the girl in his arms. The same brown eyes, the same face shape. "You know my mom?" Nina asked, noticing his reaction. Douglas swallowed hard. Yes." The ambulance arrived at that moment, sirens piercing the night air. Paramedics hurried over, and Douglas handed Nina to them, still stunned by what he had discovered. "She's my niece," he said, almost to himself. "I'm her uncle." "Are you family?" one of the paramedics asked as they placed Nina on a stretcher. "Yes. I'm her mother's brother." "Great. Can you come with us to the hospital? We need to contact her mum." Douglas nodded, unable to form more words. 7 years. It had been 7 years since he'd last seen Monica, since that terrible fight, the harsh words, the slammed doors, since he had chosen his career over everything and everyone. And now, by some twist of fate, he had saved her daughter, a niece he hadn't even known existed. "Can I go with her?" he asked, putting Nina's photo back in her bag. "Sure, we're going now." On the way to the ambulance, Douglas looked at the other driver, the man who was Nina's father. Paramedics worked frantically, but their faces revealed the gravity of the situation. Douglas felt a tightening in his chest as he climbed into the ambulance beside the stretcher where Nina lay. The girl reached out her small hand and grabbed his. Her fingers were tiny compared to his. "Will everything be okay?" she asked, her voice trembling. Douglas held her hand tightly. "I'm going to take care of you," he promised. A promise he wasn't sure he could keep, but at that moment, it was the only thing that felt right to say. The ambulance took off, sirens wailing. Douglas looked at the child, his niece, and then at the city rushing by outside the window. In a few minutes, he would come face to face with Monica again. 7 years of silence, ending in the worst possible way. As the ambulance sped through the night, Douglas took his phone out of his pocket. He would have to call his secretary and cancel all his appointments. For the first time in years, something more important than work had arisen in his life. "Which hospital are we heading to?" he asked the paramedic. "St. Francis." Douglas nodded, typing a quick message. When he finished, he turned his attention back to Nina. The paramedics had cleaned the blood from her face and were checking her vital signs. "Do you live around here?" he asked the girl, trying to distract her. Nina nodded. "On Cedar Avenue, number 278. Is it a nice place?" "There's a playground nearby," she answered, voice weak. "And the school is 3 blocks away." Douglas absorbed every detail as if it were treasure, fragments of the life his sister had built without him. The ambulance braked softly, arriving at the hospital. The doors opened, and the medical team was already waiting to receive Nina. Douglas jumped out quickly, following the stretcher through the emergency doors. A nurse stopped him. "Are you family?" "I'm her uncle," Douglas said, showing his ID. "And I need to contact her mom. She's my sister." The nurse nodded. "Fill out these forms while we do the initial exams. Then you can see her." While filling out the paperwork, Douglas realized he was trembling slightly. He didn't know Monica's phone number. He knew almost nothing about her life now, but he had an address, and that would be enough for the hospital to find her. He looked at his watch, 7:32 p.m. In less than an hour, his life had turned upside down, and somewhere in the city, his sister still had no idea that her life was also about to change forever. Douglas sat in the waiting room, staring at the white walls of the hospital. The antiseptic smell filled the air, mixed with the weak coffee aroma from the vending machine in the hallway. A TV in the corner played news on mute, colorful images no one was really watching. His thoughts were a whirlwind as he waited for updates. With each passing minute, the reality of the situation sank in more deeply. He had saved his niece, a little girl he hadn't known existed, from a car accident, and he would soon see Monica, his sister, after 7 years of complete silence. A doctor in a white coat approached. She looked serious and was holding a clipboard. "Mr. Reed?" Douglas stood up immediately. "Yes." "How is Nina?" "She's stable, but it's concerning. We've identified internal bleeding. We need to perform urgent surgery." Douglas swallowed hard. "Do whatever it takes. I'll cover all the costs." "About her father?" The doctor paused, lowering her voice. "I'm sorry, he didn't survive his injuries. We did everything we could." Douglas closed his eyes for a moment. A child had just lost her father. His niece had just become fatherless. "Has her mother been notified?" he asked. "Yes. A team was sent to the address provided. She should be here any moment." As if summoned by those words, a commotion arose at the emergency entrance. Douglas turned in and his heart stopped for an instant. Monica. She was running toward the information desk, her face contorted with worry. Her brown hair, shorter than Douglas remembered, fell over eyes that frantically scanned the area. She wore simple clothes, jeans, a t-shirt, a light jacket, so different from the images he had stored in his memory. "My daughter, Nina Mitchell. They brought her in by ambulance." The receptionist began to respond, but Douglas was already walking toward them. Each step felt heavy, as though he were walking through water. Monica saw him before he could speak. Her face shifted from worry to absolute shock. For a moment, she was completely still, as though she'd seen a ghost. "You?" The word came out almost as a gasp. Douglas stopped a few steps away. "I was there," he said simply. The doctor approached. "Mrs. Mitchell, I'm Dr. Winters. Can we talk about your daughter?" Monica tore her gaze away from Douglas, forcing herself to focus on the doctor. "How is she? Where's my Nina?" "Your daughter was seriously injured in the accident. She's stable, but we need to operate immediately. We have a team ready." "Surgery?" Monica's face went pale. "What kind of surgery?" "She has internal bleeding we need to stop. The procedure is risky, but necessary." Monica covered her mouth with her hand. Douglas could see she was struggling to keep it together. "And," Monica hesitated, "Peter? Her father?" The doctor gently touched Monica's arm. "I'm very sorry. We did everything we could, but his injuries were too severe." Monica stumbled backward. Douglas instinctively took a step forward, almost to catch her, but stopped. It wasn't his place. Not anymore. "No," Monica whispered. "It can't be. We need you to sign the authorization for Nina's surgery," the doctor continued gently. "Every minute counts." Monica nodded mechanically, following the doctor to the desk. Douglas remained where he was, a silent shadow. He watched as his sister signed the papers with trembling hands. When the doctor walked away to process the documents, Monica stood there staring at nothing. Then slowly she turned toward Douglas. "What happened?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "I was stuck in traffic. I saw the accident. Nina was trapped in the car." Douglas spoke in short, direct sentences. "I helped get her out." "And how did you—" Monica stopped. "How did you know who she was?" "A photo fell out of her bag, you and her." Monica closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them again, they shone with unshed tears. "And now Peter is dead, and my daughter—" Her voice broke. For a terrible moment, Douglas thought she would collapse right there. But Monica had always been strong. She straightened her shoulders and took a deep breath. The doctor returned. "We're taking Nina to surgery now. She's already sedated, but you can see her briefly before we start if you want." Monica nodded and followed the doctor down the hallway. She paused after a few steps and looked back. "Are you coming?" Douglas hadn't expected that. He hesitated for a moment before following his sister. They walked in silence to a prep room where Nina lay on a gurney, already hooked up to tubes and monitors. She looked even smaller under the bright hospital lights, completely still because of the sedation. Monica rushed to her daughter's side, gently touching her face. "Mummy's here, my love," she whispered, knowing Nina couldn't hear but needing to say it anyway. Douglas stood a few steps back, a lump in his throat. This was his niece, his own family, someone he hadn't known until a few hours ago. The medical team approached. "We need to take her now." Monica kissed her daughter's forehead and stepped back, tears silently rolling down her cheeks. "Take care of her," she said to the doctor, her voice breaking. "We'll do our best, doctor." Winters replied as the team began moving the gurney out of the room. After Nina was taken away, Monica and Douglas were guided to a private waiting room. The silence between them was thick, almost tangible. 7 years of distance couldn't be erased in a matter of hours. Monica sat, resting her head in her hands. Douglas remained standing, unsure where to position himself in the small space. "How long will it take?" Monica asked no one in particular. "The doctor said it could be a few hours," Douglas answered. Monica nodded, not looking at him. The silence returned, punctuated only by the ticking of the clock on the wall. Douglas cleared his throat. "I spoke to the hospital administration. All expenses are covered." Monica raised her head, her eyes suddenly hard. "What?" "The surgery, her care. I paid for everything." "I didn't ask you to do that." "I know, but I wanted to help." Monica straightened in her chair. "Thank you, but that's just a loan. I'll pay it back." Douglas opened his mouth to protest, but something in her expression made him stop. Pride. The same pride she had always had, the same trait he might share. "Whatever you prefer," he said finally. Monica stood and walked to the window. Outside, night had fallen completely over the city. Lights dotted the darkness like stars pinned to the ground. "Nina is 7, Monica said suddenly, still facing away from him. "She was born 8 months after you walked out of my life." Douglas took in the information slowly. "I didn't know." "How could you know? You never called, never wrote, never checked if I was alive or dead." Her words hit Douglas like physical blows. There was no anger in her voice, just a cold statement of facts. I met Peter the following year, Monica continued. He was kind. He took care of both of us. We got married when Nina was 2. Douglas listened silently, each word painting a picture of the life he had missed, the family he'd never met. And now he's gone. Monica's voice trembled slightly. And here you are. I can leave if you want, Douglas offered. Monica turned around, really looking at him for the first time. Her eyes were red but dry. You never cared about anyone but yourself. The sentence hung in the air between them. Douglas felt the weight of each word. The truth in them struck him like never before. He replayed his life in his mind, the years spent climbing the career ladder, the discarded relationships, the family he'd abandoned, the choices he'd made. He didn't try to defend himself. There was no possible defense. Monica watched his silence with a penetrating gaze. After a moment, she sat down again, suddenly looking drained. You should go home, she said. You've done your part. I'd rather stay, Douglas replied calmly, if that's okay. Monica shrugged, neither agreeing nor disagreeing. Douglas took it as permission and sat in a chair on the other side of the room. He took out his phone, dozens of notifications, emails, messages. For the first time in years, he turned it off completely. The hours dragged on. A nurse popped in occasionally with minimal updates. The surgery is ongoing. The doctors are working. Empty phrases that offered little comfort. Douglas watched Monica discreetly, the fatigue on her face, the small lines at the corners of her eyes that hadn't been there 7 years ago, her hands twisting in her lap, betraying her anxiety. At some point, he went to the cafeteria and returned with 2 coffees. He offered one to Monica, who took it wordlessly, a small gesture of truce. She looks a lot like you, Douglas said, after more silence. Monica glanced at him, surprised by the comment. She has your chin, she finally replied. The same as Mom's. The mention of their mother added another layer of unresolved tension. Douglas looked away, unable to face that wound too. Around midnight, Dr. Winters came into the room. They both stood immediately. The surgery was successful, she said with a slight smile. We managed to stop the bleeding. She's a fighter. Monica let out a deep sigh. When can I see her? She's in recovery. We'll keep her sedated at least until tomorrow morning. Her body needs time to start healing. Can I stay with her? Monica asked. Of course. Once she's in a room, you can stay by her side. After the doctor left, Monica sank into the chair and, for the first time since arriving, cried. Silent tears streamed down her face as she covered her mouth with her hand. Douglas felt an urge to comfort her, but stayed where he was. The gulf between them was too wide to cross with a simple hug. She's going to be okay, he said softly. Monica nodded, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. But Peter, she couldn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. The reality of his death was there, inescapable. Douglas waited for her to regain her composure. I can help with the arrangements, if you need. The arrangements, Monica repeated bitterly. Yes, I have to handle that too, don't I? My husband's funeral while my daughter is in the hospital. Douglas didn't reply. There was no adequate response to her pain. A nurse appeared at the door. Mrs. Mitchell, your daughter is being moved to room 307. You can go with her now. Monica stood up. She looked at Douglas for a moment, as if wondering what to say. Finally, she spoke simply. I'm staying with her tonight. I'll stay around, he replied, in case you need anything. Monica nodded slightly before following the nurse. Douglas was left alone in the waiting room, with only the ticking clock for company. He walked into the hallway and found a bench near the elevator. He sat down, feeling every minute of his 42 years weighing on his tired bones. The hospital around him continued its relentless rhythm. Hurried nurses, on-call doctors, the occasional beeping of equipment. Douglas thought about his life before that night. The empty penthouse, the office where he spent more hours than at home, the business dinners, the meetings, the deals, all the things he had considered important. Now, sitting on an uncomfortable hospital bench, he realized how much time he had lost. How many lives had gone on without him? Monica's, their mother's, and now Nina's. A niece he'd almost never known. A nurse passed by and looked at him curiously. Are you all right, sir? Do you need anything? Douglas shook his head. I'm just waiting, he answered. Waiting for what? She asked. puzzled. Douglas didn't know how to reply. Maybe he was waiting for a chance, or maybe just for dawn, when the world would have to keep spinning despite everything. As the night wore on, Douglas remained there, eyes fixed on the room number where his sister kept vigil over her sleeping daughter. The silence between them, built up over 7 years, was still there, but now there was something else. A little girl. A connection neither had expected, and maybe, hard as it was to admit, a chance to fix what had been broken. Morning arrived at the hospital, bringing a cold light through the windows. The corridors began to stir with the shift change, low voices, quick steps, the clink of instruments. Douglas woke with a start, realizing he had dozed off on the hard bench. His neck ached, and he stretched his tense muscles, trying to shake off his tiredness. A nurse walked by, pushing a medicine cart. "Good morning," she said, surprised to see him there. "Did you spend the whole night here?" Douglas nodded, running a hand over his unshaven face. "How's the girl in 307? "Stable. I just checked her vitals." The nurse smiled kindly. "Her mother stayed all night too, slept in the chair by the bed." Douglas thanked her with a nod and stood up. His limbs protested after hours in that uncomfortable position. He walked to the nearest bathroom, splashed water on his face, and ran his hands through his hair, trying to look less disheveled. In the mirror, a tired man looked back at him, deep circles under his eyes, stubble, red-rimmed eyes, a far cry from the impeccable executive he usually was. He needed coffee. In the ground floor cafeteria, he bought 2 large cups and a pack of crackers. He hesitated a moment before also picking up an apple and some yogurt. Monica would need something to eat. The cafeteria was almost empty at that hour, just a few hospital staff in colorful scrubs, and 1 or 2 patient relatives with the same exhausted look he wore. They all shared something in common: the waiting, the worry, the interruption of normal life. He took the elevator to the 3rd floor and walked down the silent corridor. His footsteps echoed softly on the linoleum floor. He stopped in front of room 307, took a breath and knocked lightly. There was no response. He pushed the door open carefully, making as little noise as possible. The room was dim, with the curtains half drawn, letting in only a sliver of morning light. Nina slept in the bed, her face pale against the white pillow, tubes and monitors connected to her small body. In a chair beside her, Monica slept in an uncomfortable position, head tilted, arms crossed as if she were cold. Douglas entered quietly. The antiseptic smell of the hospital was stronger in the closed room. He placed the coffee, crackers, and fruit on the bedside table. He watched his sister for a moment, noticing how tired she looked even in sleep. The worry lines on her forehead never completely disappeared, even while she slept. He slipped back out and headed to the nurse's station. "May I help you?" an older nurse asked, her grey hair and kind expression reassuring. "Yes. My niece is in 307. Her mother spent all night in the chair. Do you have an extra blanket?" The nurse smiled. "Certainly." She opened a cabinet and handed him a hospital blanket, folded and sealed in plastic. "It's new. You can take it." Douglas thanked her and returned to the room. Monica still slept, breathing softly and steadily, moving cautiously. He opened the package and gently draped the blanket over her, trying not to wake her. She shifted unconsciously, seeking the extra warmth, but did not wake up. He stepped back, relieved he hadn't disturbed her. His eyes moved from his sister's face to the monitor showing Nina's vital signs, numbers and lines he barely understood, but their steady rhythm was comforting. At least the girl was stable. He was about to leave when Monica stirred. She opened her eyes slowly, disoriented for a moment, until her gaze landed on Douglas. "You're still here," she murmured, her voice rough with sleep and surprise. Douglas gestured toward the coffee on the table. "I brought coffee. And something to eat." Monica blinked a few times, shifting in the chair. She noticed the blanket over her and looked at Douglas with an unreadable expression. Not exactly gratitude, but a silent acknowledgement of his gesture. "Thank you," she finally said, picking up one of the coffees. "How was her night?" Douglas asked, glancing at Nina. "Stable. The doctors say her vitals are good." Monica took a sip of coffee, closing her eyes briefly at the warmth. "They'll start reducing her sedation today." Douglas nodded. "That's great news." The silence returned, lighter than the previous night, but still laden with unspoken words. Douglas looked around the sterile hospital room. Beige walls, magenta grey linoleum floor, the bed, the equipment, all impersonal and cold. "Do you need anything?" he asked, feeling the need to be useful somehow. Monica hesitated, glancing at her rumpled clothes after a night in the chair. "I'm okay like this," she said, but her eyes betrayed her discomfort. "I can bring more coffee later," Douglas offered. "And maybe something better to eat. The cafeteria food isn't great, but there should be a restaurant nearby." She nodded slightly, turning her attention back to Nina. The gesture was clear. For now, the conversation was over. Douglas left the room feeling the weight of the silence between them. He walked aimlessly through the hospital corridors, watching the morning routine intensify. Doctors making rounds, nurses exchanging information, relatives arriving for visits. The hospital followed its own rhythm, indifferent to the private dramas it housed. He passed the information desk, the small garden near the entrance, the gift shop just opening. He stopped in front of the display, noticing softer blankets in gentle colors. He went in and bought one in a light blue shade. Maybe it would make the chair where Monica would spend another night a bit more comfortable. The feeling of being an intruder lingered as he returned to Nina's floor. He didn't belong in Monica's life, or in his niece's life, and yet he couldn't bring himself to leave. When he came back about an hour later, he found Monica talking to a doctor, a middle-aged man with glasses and a serious expression. "We'll gradually reduce the sedatives over the next few hours," he was saying. "It's possible she could wake by the end of the day, but each patient responds differently." Douglas paused at the door, not wanting to interrupt. The doctor noticed his presence and nodded politely before leaving. "I brought more coffee," Douglas said, entering, "and a sandwich from the cafeteria. It's not great, but better than nothing." Monica accepted his offering. "Thank you. Any news?" "They're starting to taper off the sedatives." She paused, picking up the sandwich. "Thank you for that, too." Douglas took out the blue blanket from the gift shop bag. "I thought it might be more comfortable than the hospital's." "For the chair?" Monica looked at the blanket in surprise. It was a small indulgence, something out of place in the sterile hospital environment. "You didn't have to buy that." "It was nothing," Douglas said, placing it over the arm of the chair. He sat in the corner seat, maintaining a respectful distance. For a long moment, neither spoke. The only sounds were the steady beeping of monitors and the occasional shuffle of nurses in the hallway. "You don't have to stay," Monica finally said. "I'm sure you have obligations." "Nothing that can't wait." She gave him a skeptical look. "I already called the office," he added. "Cancelled everything for today." "Douglas Reed cancelling meetings?" A slight hint of irony tinged her voice. "That's new." Douglas didn't reply. She was right, after all. In recent years, nothing had been more important than his professional commitments. No family, no relationships, nothing. An administrative assistant appeared at the door. "Mrs. Mitchell, we have some forms that need your signature, insurance and a few authorizations." Monica sighed. "Now, if possible. There are quite a few documents." "I can help," Douglas offered. "I work with contracts." The man seemed relieved. "Great. We can use the family lounge at the end of the hallway." Monica hesitated, looking at Nina. "Go ahead," Douglas said. "I'll stay with her. If anything changes, I'll call you right away." She nodded and followed the staff member. Douglas stayed alone with Nina. The room was quiet, broken only by the rhythmic sounds of the machines. "Hi, Nina," he said softly, feeling slightly foolish talking to someone who couldn't hear him. "I'm your Uncle Douglas. We haven't really met yet." He paused, studying the girl's serene face. There was something of Monica in her, the shape of her eyes, the gentle curve of her nose, but also traces that must have belonged to her father, the man Douglas would never know now. "Your mom's worried about you, but the doctors say you'll be fine." He hesitated. "I'm sorry about your dad. He seemed like a good man." The words sounded inadequate, but Douglas kept speaking in a low voice, as if the one-sided conversation might form some kind of bond. "I don't know much about being an uncle," he confessed. "Actually, I just found out I am one. But when you get better, maybe we can get to know each other." He felt awkward, out of place. What did he know about 7-year-olds anyway? About what they liked, how they thought, what mattered to them? His life had been so focused on numbers, contracts, negotiations. It seemed he had forgotten how to speak to real people, especially a child. Monica returned nearly an hour later, looking exhausted. "So many papers," she said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "And questions. How will I pay? Who'll take care of her? Arrangements for—" Her voice faltered. "For Peter." Douglas looked away, giving her a moment of privacy for her grief. "Have you had lunch?" he asked. Monica shook her head. "I'll get something. What would you like?" "Anything." "I'm not very hungry." Douglas went downstairs, returned with a tray, soup, sandwiches, juice. He set it on a small table and pulled it closer to Monica. "Thank you," she said, tasting the soup without enthusiasm. The day wore on slowly. The nurse came in several times to check vital signs and adjust medication. The doctor returned for a quick exam. Monica received some phone calls on her cell. Friends, co-workers, concerned people asking about her and Nina. The accident. Douglas left the room during those calls, giving her privacy. He used the time to call his office again, cancelling more meetings, postponing commitments. His secretary sounded confused by his instructions. "Cancel everything for tomorrow too," he said, "and let them know I might need to be out the rest of the week. Mr. Reed, are you sure? The meeting with the Japanese investors, postpone it. But they came all the way from Tokyo to find a solution. Martha, I'm dealing with a family emergency." The words sounded strange to his ears. Family emergency. When was the last time he had thought in terms of family? After so many years dedicating every minute to work, it felt surreal to ignore it all now. But he couldn't imagine being anywhere else. The idea of sitting in a meeting room discussing profit margins while his niece lay in a hospital bed, while his sister faced the loss of her husband, was unthinkable. When he went back to the room, he noticed Monica shivering slightly in the hospital's strong air conditioning. She had the blue blanket over her legs, but still seemed cold. "Want me to ask them to adjust the temperature?" he asked. Monica shook her head. "It's fine for Nina, don't worry about me." Douglas noticed a half-finished coffee, already cold, on the bedside table. Without saying anything, he left and returned minutes later with a new cup, steaming hot. "Thank you," Monica said, taking the cup. "You don't have to keep doing this." "It's nothing." Monica sipped the coffee, watching him over the rim of the cup. "Why are you still here, Douglas?" The question was direct, without hostility, just genuine curiosity. "I don't know," he answered honestly. "I just know I need to be." Monica said nothing more, but something in her gaze shifted. A small opening, perhaps, in the wall of reserve she had built. Douglas settled into the chair in the corner, trying to be helpful without intruding. When a nurse brought a form, he helped Monica fill it out. When her coffee got cold, he fetched another. When he noticed her shifting uncomfortably in the chair, he found an extra pillow. Small gestures, tiny acts, inadequate compared to the gulf between them. But they were what he could offer. As the day wore on into afternoon, the hospital room began to show small signs of occupation, a magazine on the table, a half-full cup of water, the blue blanket folded on the chair when not in use, a bag of extra sandwiches for later, traces of presence, of continuity. A nurse came in to replace Nina's IV bag. "The doctor is pleased with her progress," she commented while working. "She's a strong girl." "Like her mother," Douglas said. Monica looked at him, surprised by the comment. A hint of a smile crossed her tired face, so brief that Douglas almost missed it. Around 5, as the sky began to turn orange outside, Monica broke the silence that had settled between them. "Mom died." The abrupt words hit Douglas like a punch to the stomach. On some level, he had known their mother was gone. He hadn't asked, hadn't confirmed, but he had known. Her absence in Monica's and Nina's lives was a silent evidence. "When?" he managed to ask, his voice hoarse. 3 years ago, cancer." Monica looked out the window, not at him. At least it was quick. A few months from diagnosis to the end. Douglas closed his eyes, a deep pain spreading through his chest. His mother, dead. Without him ever saying goodbye. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" Monica turned to him then, something new in her gaze. Not just anger or hurt, but a kind of disbelief. "I tried calling 3 times. Your secretary said you were in important meetings. I left messages." Her voice began to rise. "I sent an email. You replied 2 days later that you were in Japan closing a big deal and would call when you got back." Douglas remembered that email vaguely. He remembered thinking he would respond properly when he had more time. Then, as always, other matters arose. Other priorities. Mom died, and you didn't even show up at the funeral. You were too busy. Just like our father. The final words were spat out. Douglas felt their impact, the comparison he had always feared. His father, who had abandoned the family for his career, for other women, for a life he deemed more important. The man Douglas had sworn he would never become, and yet, unknowingly, he had followed exactly the same path. Douglas didn't try to defend himself. There was no defense. For the first time, he truly faced the damage he had done, not just the rift with his sister, but his complete absence when she needed him most, when their mother needed him most. "There is no excuse," he said at last, his voice low and controlled. "No, there isn't," Monica agreed. A nurse entered just then, interrupting what might have become a heated argument. She checked the monitors, made some notes, and smiled at them. "The doctor will be here soon to adjust medication so we can start waking your daughter," she told Monica. "Everything is progressing well." When the nurse left, the moment of confrontation had passed, but the words lingered in the air. Douglas stood and walked to the window. Outside, normal life went on. Cars, people, the world spinning on its axis undisturbed. Inside him, something was breaking. The image he had cultivated for years, successful man, brilliant executive, solitary by choice, shattered under the raw truth. He was just another man who had abandoned his family when they needed him most. He thought of his mother, sick, dying, possibly calling out for him, hoping her son would appear, at least once, to hold her hand. The pain of that image was almost physical. "Did she ask about me?" The words escaped before he could stop them. Monica held his gaze for a long moment. "Every day." Douglas swallowed, trying to control the surge of emotion threatening to overwhelm him. He didn't deserve to cry now. He had no right. "Can I bring you something?" he asked finally. It was a pathetic offer compared to what he had done or failed to do, but it was all he could manage at that moment. Monica shook her head. "I don't need anything." But after a moment, she added in a quieter voice, "Just stay. I can't handle thinking about all this alone right now." Douglas nodded and returned to the chair. He picked up the blue blanket he'd bought and folded it carefully, placing it on the armrest. A small act of order in a world that had collapsed for all of them. The afternoon wore on while they waited. Nina kept sleeping, unaware of the silent drama unfolding around her bed. And Douglas remained, knowing that nothing he did could repair what was lost, but determined, for the first time, simply to be there for what remained. Outside, the sun began to set, bathing the room in golden light through the gaps in the blinds. The shadows lengthened, marking the end of another day, one that had begun like any other but turned out to be a turning point in his life. Silently, Douglas and Monica waited. The folded blanket on the chair, a small symbol of care, of presence, waited too, ready to offer comfort through the long night ahead. Night had fully settled over the city. In room 307 of the hospital, Nina slept, the monitors beeping steadily, reassuringly. Monica had finally agreed to step away for a moment to freshen up in the restroom and get something more substantial to eat from the hospital cafeteria. Douglas had insisted, promising not to leave his niece's side for even a second. "I'll be back in 20 minutes, Monica said, reluctant to leave the room even for that short time. "Take as long as you need," Douglas replied. "We're fine here." When the door closed behind her, Douglas let out a long breath. It was the first time he was truly alone since everything had happened, the first chance to process the turmoil of the last 36 hours. He stood and walked to the window. Outside, the city gleamed with thousands of lights, buildings, cars, signs, life happening in all directions, people heading home from work, families having dinner together, friends meeting at bars. His mind wandered to his empty penthouse apartment in the most exclusive building in the city. Spacious, elegant, impeccably decorated by an interior designer who charged more per hour than many people made in a month. A place featured in architecture magazines, but that had never, for a single moment, felt like home. Standing in a hospital room, Douglas realized he couldn't recall the last time he'd invited anyone over, not for a business meeting or to impress a client, but just to share a moment, a meal, a conversation, a laugh. He looked at Nina, his niece. A 7-year-old girl he hadn't known existed until 2 days ago. Blood of his blood. His sister's daughter, who had grown up without knowing her uncle. How many birthdays had he missed? How many Christmases? How many moments that would never come back? He went to the small bathroom attached to the room. He turned on the faucet and splashed water on his face, trying to shake off his exhaustion. When he lifted his eyes, he saw his reflection in the mirror above the sink. The man staring back seemed like a stranger. Grey hairs at the temples that hadn't been there a few years ago. Deep lines around the eyes and mouth. A look of... what? Emptiness. Weariness. Something more profound and disturbing. The truth hit him like a bolt of lightning. The man in the mirror was his father. The same distant look. The same posture. The same kind of absent presence that had marked his childhood. A father always on the go, always chasing the next deal, the next conquest, the next place he wouldn't be with his family. "You're going to be different, Douglas," his mother had often said. "You understand the value of people, not just things." What a lie that had become. What a betrayal of her trust. Douglas gripped the edges of the sink, his knuckles turning white. The mirror had no frame, just raw glass fixed to the wall, like his life. Functional, without adornment, without the framing of relationships, bonds, real connections. There, facing his own reflection, Douglas Reed, CEO of Reed Enterprises, owner of 3 homes in 3 different countries, collector of luxury cars and rare watches, a man whose net worth had 9 digits, finally saw himself clearly for the first time in years. A man who had become everything he hated. His father had left the family for ambition. Douglas had done the same, only more efficiently, earning more money, accumulating more possessions, outdoing his father in the only game he'd ever valued, only to discover the prize was empty. A bitter laugh escaped his lips. It echoed in the small bathroom, shattering the silence. "I beat you, Dad," he murmured to the reflection. "I did everything better than you. I'm richer, more powerful, and I'm completely alone." The words hung in the air like an accusation. Alone. At 42 years old, with all his success, Douglas Reed was as alone as his father had been in his final years. The old man had died in a luxury nursing home in Switzerland, surrounded by paid nurses, without a single friend or relative at his side. Was that the future waiting for him? Douglas closed his eyes, unable to keep looking at the man in the mirror. Images flooded his mind. His mother, dying, asking for him every day. Monica, alone, handling the funeral, all the arrangements. And now Nina, scarred for life by losing her father. Growing up without the extended family she should have had. A family he had chosen to ignore. When he opened his eyes again, something had changed in his reflection. Not physically, but an expression in his gaze, a new determination. "No," he said quietly but firmly, "I don't want to keep doing this." The words sounded like a vow, a promise. It wasn't too late. He couldn't bring his mother back or erase years of absence, but he could be present now. He could try to fix what was still fixable. Douglas took a deep breath, splashed his face once more, and returned to the room. He approached Nina's bed and gently adjusted the blanket over her. "I'm going to do better," he whispered. "I promise." He sat in the armchair and picked up his phone. Dozens of unread emails, messages, notifications, his business world clamoring for his attention. With deliberate movements, he composed a new email addressed to his company's board of directors. "I need to inform you that I'll be away indefinitely, due to a family emergency. Jonathan Miller will take over my responsibilities until further notice. All appointments should be rescheduled or delegated to the appropriate teams. I will not be available for meetings or calls in the coming days." He reread the text, considering its impact. The stock value would probably dip when the news broke. Investors would be nervous. Competitors would try to capitalize on the apparent instability. For a moment, the old Douglas hesitated. He had worked tirelessly to build his empire. Was he really willing to risk it all? He looked again at Nina, at the empty chair where Monica had spent so many hours, and he hit send. The sound of the door opening made him turn around. Monica was back, looking slightly more rested, carrying a cup of tea. "Everything okay here?" she asked, going immediately to check on Nina. "All quiet," Douglas replied. The doctor stopped by to check her vitals. They're gradually reducing the sedatives. Monica nodded. taking her place in the chair beside the bed. Her eyes were red, maybe from exhaustion, maybe from crying. Douglas remained silent for a few minutes, watching her, his younger sister, the little girl with braids who had followed him everywhere when they were kids, the determined teenager who decided to study art against their father's wishes, the strong woman now facing the worst crisis of her life. "Monica," he began, his voice low so as not to disturb the hushed atmosphere of the room. "I've been thinking—" She looked at him, waiting. Douglas swallowed. The words he needed to say were stuck in his throat, blocked by years of pride, excuses, self-deception. "I'm sorry," he finally managed, "for everything, for not being there, for leaving you alone." Monica's eyes widened slightly, surprised. She hadn't expected that from him, from the brother who never admitted mistakes, who always had a justification or a rational explanation for his choices. "When Mum got sick," he continued, his voice choked. "There's no excuse. I should have been there. Should have taken your calls, answered your emails, cancelled anything to be with you." Monica didn't respond. Her gaze was intense, as though trying to gauge his sincerity. "I became—" Douglas paused, searching for the right words. "I became what I always swore I wouldn't be. Just like Dad, maybe worse." Monica still said nothing, but something in her expression shifted. A slight softening in her eyes, a small tilt of her head. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," Douglas went on. "I just want you to know I'm truly sorry, and that I need to do better, to be better." Douglas waited, tense. He didn't know what to expect. Anger, more accusations, or maybe a request for him to leave. He would have deserved any of those. But Monica merely nodded slightly. She said nothing, made no move toward him. She just listened and acknowledged his words. And for Douglas, that was more than enough. Certainly more than he deserved. Silence returned, but different now. Less heavy, less tense. A silence of reflection, not accusation. A doctor walked in, interrupting the moment. "Good evening," he said, checking the chart. "We're going to make some adjustments to her medication. If everything goes as we expect, Nina should start waking up gradually over the next few hours." Monica sat up straighter. "Will she be in pain?" "We're controlling it with pain medication. She might be disoriented at first, which is normal. You just need to reassure her, remind her where she is and that she's safe." The doctor made the necessary adjustments and left. Monica glanced at the clock, nearly 10 at night. "You should go home," she told Douglas. "Get some rest, take a shower." Douglas shook his head. "I'd rather stay, unless you want me to go." Monica seemed to consider. For a moment, Douglas thought she would ask for privacy with her daughter. He'd respect that, of course. "You can stay," she said finally. "It'd be good to have help when she wakes up." Douglas nodded, feeling a wave of relief. It was a small step, minimal really, but it was a beginning. The night wore on slowly. Monica dozed in the chair, waking at every sound or movement from Nina. Douglas stayed awake, keeping watch, watching them both. Around midnight, he noticed Monica shivering again from the cold. Without a word, he took the blue blanket and draped it over her. This time she murmured a sleepy thank you before settling under the soft fabric. Douglas returned to his armchair in the corner. His phone vibrated, more emails, more messages, the world demanding his attention. With a decisive movement, he turned off the device completely. He looked out the window into the night. At the world he had chased for so long, sacrificing everything else in the process, a world that now seemed so small, so insignificant compared to what truly mattered. He turned back to Monica and Nina, his family, what remained of it, at least, people who barely knew him, who had every reason to resent his presence, but who, by some miracle, allowed him to stay. Douglas felt something he hadn't experienced in years, a sense of purpose that wasn't tied to money, power, or status, a basic human connection he had neglected for far too long. In the unframed bathroom mirror, he had seen the truth about himself, a painful but liberating truth. The man who had entered this hospital 2 days earlier was not the same man who now kept watch over his sister and niece in the dimly lit room. The old Douglas certainly would have found an excuse to return to work as soon as the crisis passed. He might have sent money or assigned some assistant to keep tabs on Nina's recovery. But the man now sitting in the hospital room knew there was no turning back. The choices he made from this moment on would determine not only his future, but the kind of person he would choose to be. "I don't want to keep doing this," he repeated in silence, renewing that vow as the night stretched on and a new morning approached, carrying with it the promise of a fresh start, of redemption, of second chances he wouldn't let slip away this time. Monica shifted in the chair, the blue blanket wrapped around her like a protective cocoon. Even in sleep, her hand stayed close to Nina's, ready to hold to reassure. Douglas watched that gesture, marveling at the connection between mother and child, at the unconditional love he saw. That was the kind of connection he had lost, had thrown away in exchange for empty achievements. An unframed mirror could reflect accurately, but it couldn't contain shelter or give context. Like his life, technically successful, but lacking the framework of love, family, the bonds that truly mattered. The first rays of sunlight began to slip through the blinds, heralding a new day. For the first time in a long time, Douglas Reed was eager to see what it might bring. The days in the hospital had become routine. Nina was now awake, still weak but gradually improving. Color had returned to her cheeks, and occasionally a shy smile appeared when the nurses came in. She spoke little, mainly to her mother, watching Douglas with quiet curiosity. Monica oscillated between moments of hope and bouts of anxiety. Exhaustion showed in her eyes, in the lines of worry on her face. She slept in short increments, waking with a start each time to check that Nina was still okay. Douglas was a constant presence. He'd established his own routine, bringing Monica breakfast, talking to doctors to understand the latest updates, running small errands to make the room more comfortable. He turned the corner chair into an improvised office, using his phone only as much as necessary to keep obligations in check from a distance. That afternoon, the doctor had done a more thorough exam on Nina and left with a satisfied expression. "She's responding very well to treatment," he said. "If she continues like this, we might consider discharge in a few days." The news should have brought complete relief, but Douglas noticed that after the doctor left, Monica seemed even more tense. Nina had drifted off again. She still slept a lot, her little body working hard to recover. The room was quiet, only the occasional footsteps in the hallway and the steady beep of monitors. Douglas watched his sister standing by the window, gazing outside without really seeing anything. Her shoulders were tense, her hands restless. "You should try to rest," he suggested gently. Monica shook her head. "I can't." "The doctor said she's improving." "That's great news." "I know," but something in her voice betrayed a deeper worry. Douglas approached, stopping beside her at the window. Outside, late afternoon bathed the city in golden tones. People were heading home to their normal lives. "What's bothering you?" he asked. Monica took a deep breath, still looking out. "And then what?" "When we leave here," her voice was almost a whisper, "how am I going to handle everything alone? Nina will need special care. I have to arrange Peter's funeral. The apartment, the bills, work." Her words spilled out faster and faster, as though a dam had burst. Douglas realized she had kept these concerns bottled up, focusing only on Nina's immediate recovery. Now, with the possibility of discharge looming, the reality of what came next hit her full force. "You're not alone," he said. "I can help." Monica let out a short, humorless laugh. "For how long, Douglas? Until your next big deal comes along?" The question stung, but it was fair. Douglas had no way to prove his intentions except through his actions right now. "For as long as it takes," he replied simply. Monica finally turned to face him. Her face showed the weariness of these past days, deep circles under her eyes, pale skin, eyes red from tears. "I've already lost so much," she said, her voice cracking. "I don't want to lose my daughter too." The vulnerability in her tone struck Douglas deeply. Monica, always strong, always determined, now revealing her greatest fear. A fear any mother would have, the fear of not being able to protect her child. Without thinking, Douglas reached out and took her hand. It was an instinctive gesture, something he hadn't done in years. To his surprise, Monica didn't pull away. Her fingers, cold and trembling, entwined with his. "She's strong," Douglas said, gently squeezing his sister's hand. "Just like you." Monica glanced down at their joined hands, as if the gesture surprised her as much as it did him. For a moment, she seemed about to say something, but then her eyes filled with tears. "Remember that time?" Douglas began, trying to distract her from her consuming fear. When you broke your arm falling out of the tree in our backyard. Monica blinked, surprised by the sudden topic change. What does that have to do with anything now? You were 8. I was supposed to be watching you, but I was more interested in finishing my model airplane. A faint recognition appeared in Monica's eyes. The old apple tree. I told you not to climb it, but you said, if you can do it, so can I. Monica completed, a ghost of a smile on her lips. Exactly, and you climbed higher than I ever had. And then I fell, Monica said. Broke my arm in 2 places. Douglas nodded. I remember the sound. I'd never been so scared in my life. I thought I'd killed my little sister. Both were silent for a moment, remembering. But you know what impressed me? Douglas continued. You didn't cry. Not right away. You stood up, looked at your crooked arm and said, I think I need to go to the hospital. Monica finished, and this time a real smile formed, like you were talking about going for ice cream. You only started crying when you saw that I was crying, Douglas recalled. You were panicking, Monica said, a hint of teasing in her voice now. Running around in circles, screaming for help. Hey, I was only 13, and I thought I'd ruined your life. Well, you carried my backpack at school for 6 weeks after that. It was the least I could do. They looked at each other and, to their surprise, laughed. A quiet laugh, so as not to wake Nina, but genuine. The kind of laughter they used to share as kids, co-conspirators in small adventures, secrets, discoveries. For a moment, they were just siblings again, Douglas and Monica. Not the successful executive and the widowed single mother, just brother and sister, connected by shared memories, by a history only they fully knew. The laughter faded, but something remained, a lightness that wasn't there before. Nina's got your resilience, Douglas said. Remember how she held my hand in the ambulance? She was scared, but trying to be brave. Monica nodded, turning to look at her sleeping daughter. She's stronger than she looks, just like her mother. Monica didn't reply, but her expression softened. They stayed side by side for a few more minutes, watching Nina, still holding hands, a small point of contact, a slowly rebuilding bridge over years of distance. I'll be here, Douglas finally said, breaking the silence. To help with the funeral, the bills, whatever you need. Monica didn't reply immediately. When she spoke, her voice had a different tone, not fully trusting, but perhaps willing to consider the possibility. One day at a time, she said. Let's see how Nina does first. Douglas nodded. It was the most he could hope for at the moment. One day at a time. A shared memory. A brief moment of laughter. Small steps toward each other again. Outside the window, the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the city. Inside that hospital room, something old and almost forgotten was beginning, very slowly, to renew itself. At last, the day of hospital discharge arrived. Nina, still fragile but visibly better, sat on the bed while the nurse explained the care she would need in the coming weeks. The girl swung her legs slightly, eager to leave the room she had spent so much time in. Monica gathered the few belongings they had accumulated during their stay. Clothes, books, the blue blanket Douglas had bought and which Nina now considered her good luck charm. Her face showed relief at finally being able to take her daughter home, mixed with apprehension about the future. Remember, the nurse said, no strenuous activity for at least a month. Those internal stitches need to heal completely. Nina made a face but nodded obediently. And I need to see you for a follow-up appointment next week, added the doctor who had entered the room. I'm very pleased with your recovery, Nina. You've been an excellent patient. Can I go back to school soon? Nina asked. We'll see how you feel after a few days at home, the doctor replied with a smile. But probably in 2 weeks, if all continues well. Douglas watched from the doorway, keeping a respectful distance. Over the past few weeks, he had established a routine with Monica and Nina, present but not intrusive, helpful but not overbearing. His relationship with his niece was still new, delicate, but Nina was starting to open up, asking occasional questions and accepting small gifts like books and games to pass the time in the hospital. With Monica, the connection was more complex. There were moments like the shared childhood memory, when they laughed together or finished each other's sentences, as though the 7-year separation had never existed. But there were also loaded silences, looks that questioned whether this renewed closeness would last, whether Douglas had really changed. Do you need help getting home? He asked after the doctor left. Monica finished packing a small backpack. Yes, I think so. There's quite a bit to carry. It was a small victory, Monica accepting his help without hesitation. I can carry this, Nina announced, trying to pick up a book from the bedside table and wincing when the movement pulled on her stitches. Slow down, young lady, Monica said, rushing to help. Remember what the doctor said. Douglas smiled at his niece. How about I carry everything and you supervise to make sure I don't forget anything? Nina considered the offer, then nodded seriously. Okay. Don't forget Bunny. She pointed to the stuffed rabbit on the chair. I would never forget Bunny, Douglas replied solemnly, placing the toy carefully on top of the backpack where Nina could see it. An orderly arrived with a wheelchair. Standard procedure, he explained when Nina grimaced. All patients leave in a wheelchair. While Monica helped Nina settle into the chair, Douglas's phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced at the screen and saw Jonathan Miller's name, his executive VP. He ignored the call. A few seconds later, it buzzed again and again. Is something wrong? Monica asked, noticing his expression. Nothing important, he replied, silencing the phone. All set? Monica nodded but looked suspicious. The phone buzzed once more, even on silent, and she raised an eyebrow. Seems important. Douglas hesitated. Maybe, but it can wait. If you need to answer, he shook his head. Later, let's get Nina home. The ride from the hospital to Monica's apartment was uneventful. Nina watched the city through the taxi window with renewed fascination, as if seeing everything for the first time. Douglas had offered to call his personal driver, but Monica refused, one of the small boundaries she still maintained. At the apartment, Monica settled Nina on the couch while Douglas brought in the bags from the hospital. The place felt different to him now. Not just a modest apartment he'd briefly visited to grab a stuffed rabbit, but the home where his niece was growing up, where his sister had built a life without him. Would you like some tea? Monica offered, heading to the kitchen. Or coffee? Coffee would be great, thanks. While Monica prepared the drinks, Douglas's phone buzzed yet again. This time it was a text from his secretary. Urgent. Japanese are threatening to cancel the contract if you don't attend the meeting today. Miller is trying to call. $250 million at stake. Douglas took a deep breath, feeling the familiar weight of business pressure. $250 million. The kind of deal that, until a few weeks ago, would have been his top priority. The kind of agreement that had built his reputation, his empire. Uncle Douglas? Nina's voice interrupted his thoughts. Will you stay for dinner? He looked at his niece, nestled among pillows on the sofa, her eyes large and hopeful. Before he could answer, his phone started ringing, no longer just a vibration, but the loud ring indicating a call from his office. You can answer, Monica said from the kitchen. It sounds like they really want to talk to you. Douglas nodded and walked to the window to take the call. Read. Douglas, thank God. Jonathan Miller's voice was tense, almost desperate. I've been trying to reach you for hours. I'm busy, Jonathan. What's going on? The Japanese delegation is here, all of them. We've been in the conference room for 2 hours, but they refuse to finalize without you. They say the deal is with Douglas Reed, not just the company. Douglas closed his eyes for a moment. He knew this kind of negotiation well, a matter of honor, personal trust. He'd spent months cultivating a relationship with these Japanese executives. Explain that I'm dealing with a family emergency. I did. They understand, but they leave early tomorrow. It's now or never. Douglas, $250 million. Out of the corner of his eye, Douglas saw Monica returning from the kitchen with 2 cups of coffee. Nina was flipping through a book on the sofa, occasionally glancing at him curiously. How long to get there? Douglas asked, more out of habit than intention. If you leave now, 40 minutes. I sent a car. It's waiting downstairs. Douglas felt a familiar jolt, the adrenaline of major deals, the urgency, the significance. For years, that feeling had been his fuel, his reason for existing. But now, strangely, it felt distant, like an echo of a previous life. He looked at Monica, who set the cups on the coffee table, pretending not to hear, but clearly listening. At Nina, fragile but brave, just out of the hospital. His family, the family he had almost lost completely. Jonathan, he said at last, you'll have to close it without me. What? Douglas, you don't understand. They're leaving. The contract will... My priority right now is my family. The silence on the other end was profound. You have full authority to negotiate, Douglas continued. If they insist on speaking with me, set up a video conference tomorrow before their flight. That's the best I can do. Douglas, you've worked on this contract for... I know, and I trust you to finalize it. I have to go. Douglas hung up before Jonathan could protest further. He stood there for a moment, absorbing the weight of what he'd just done. $250 million. A contract he'd pursued for over a year. The kind of deal that would make headlines in the financial press, and he had chosen to stay. When he turned around, Monica was watching him. She stood near the sofa, observing him with an expression he couldn't decipher. It sounded important, she said quietly, keeping her voice low so Nina, absorbed in her book, wouldn't hear. It was, Douglas said simply. And you're not going? Douglas shook his head. No. Monica studied him for a long moment. Something changed in her gaze, a barrier being removed, or maybe the first glimpse of renewed trust. You stayed, she finally said, voice barely above a whisper. That says a lot. Douglas felt a lump in his throat. Monica's silent approval meant more than any contract ever could. Uncle Douglas, Nina called from the sofa. Are you really staying for dinner? Douglas went over and knelt beside her, meeting her gaze at eye level. If your mum doesn't mind, I'd love to stay. She doesn't mind, Nina said confidently. Right, Mom. Monica gave a faint smile. Of course not. Actually, I need to think about what to make for dinner. There's not much in the fridge. I can order something, Douglas offered. No greasy food for Nina, Monica warned. Her stomach's still sensitive after the medication. How about soup and light sandwiches? I know a good place that delivers. Monica agreed, and Douglas made the call. While they waited, Nina convinced her uncle to play cards with her, a simple game she could manage despite her limited movements. Monica watched from the kitchen, making tea for Nina, allowing herself a rare moment of relaxation. When the food arrived, they ate at the small dining table so Nina wouldn't have to move much. The conversation flowed more freely than Douglas would have thought possible, mostly because Nina filled the time with stories from school, asking about his job, wanting to know if he had a dog. I don't, unfortunately, Douglas replied. I live in an apartment and I travel a lot. You could get a cat, Nina suggested. Cats are independent. True. I never thought of that. We had a cat, Nina said, a shadow crossing her face, but he got sick and went to heaven. Monica stroked her daughter's hair. Whiskers had a long, happy life, remember? Nina nodded, but her lower lip trembled slightly. It was the first real moment of sadness Douglas had seen from her since leaving the hospital, a reminder that behind the child's adaptability lay real grief. After dinner, Monica announced it was bath time and medication time for Nina. Need help with anything? Douglas offered. Actually, yes, Monica said. There are some things in Nina's room that need reorganizing so she can reach them easily. While I give her a bath, maybe you could... Of course. It was the first time Monica directly asked for his help, letting him into their lives a little more. Douglas walked into Nina's room, following her instructions to bring down certain books and toys to lower shelves, to put specific clothes in drawers she could reach. While he was arranging things, his phone vibrated again. Another message from Jonathan. Japanese are leaving. Last chance. Douglas stared at it for a long moment, then slid the phone back into his pocket without replying. His choice was already made. When Monica and Nina returned, the girl was in pajamas, hair damp, and an expression of drowsy contentment. Bedtime for you, young lady, Monica said. It's been a big day. Nina made no protest, a sign she was still recovering. Douglas kept his distance as Monica tucked her in, covered her with the comforter, and gave her a kiss goodnight. Can Uncle Douglas say goodnight too? Nina asked, surprising both her mother and uncle. Monica looked at him, and he approached hesitantly. Good night, Nina. Sleep well. Will you come back tomorrow? She asked, her eyes already closing in sleep. Douglas looked at Monica, unsure. We'll see, Monica said, rescuing him from commitment. Now sleep. They left the room, Monica leaving the door slightly ajar. In the living room, a comfortable silence settled between them. Douglas began clearing the dinner dishes. I can handle that, Monica said. I don't mind helping. She didn't insist, and together they cleaned the small kitchen. It was a domestic, ordinary moment, the kind of thing families do every day without thinking. But for Douglas, it was extraordinary. "Your phone didn't stop ringing today," Monica commented while drying a plate. "It must be really important." Douglas hesitated only a moment. "A big contract with Japanese investors." "How big?" 250 million. Monica nearly dropped the plate. "Millions? And you just didn't go?" Douglas shrugged, trying to act more casual than he felt. "There are more important things." Monica set the plate on the counter and turned fully to him. Her eyes searched his face as if looking for something specific. "I want to be part of your lives," Douglas said, the words spilling out before he could stop them. "If you'll let me." Monica didn't reply immediately. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm, measured, but not cold. "Then try. But really try." The simplicity of her answer, neither a rejection nor a warm acceptance, was pure Monica, direct, honest, without empty promises or premature guarantees. Douglas nodded. "That's all I'm asking for. A chance." "Nina likes you," Monica said, returning to her task of drying dishes. "She doesn't usually open up so quickly to strangers." "She's amazing," Douglas replied. "Smart, observant. She has your eyes." "And your stubborn chin," Monica added with a small smile. "And the stubbornness too." They finished cleaning in a comfortable silence. Douglas grabbed his coat, getting ready to leave. "Thanks for dinner." Monica nodded. "Nina will ask about you tomorrow." It was almost an invitation. "I can stop by after work," he said, "if that's okay." "It's fine." At the door, Douglas hesitated. There was so much to say, so many apologies still owed, so many years to make up for. But perhaps for now, simply being there, choosing to stay when he could have gone, was enough. "Good night, Monica." "Good night, Douglas." As he descended the building stairs, his phone buzzed with a new message. It was from Jonathan. "Japanese agreed to a video conference tomorrow morning. You're a lucky man, Reed." Douglas smiled, putting the phone in his pocket. Lucky wasn't the word he would have used. For the first time in a long while, his priorities were finally in the right place. The contract still mattered, of course. It was his job, his responsibility to the company and its employees, but not at the expense of his family. Stepping into the cool night air, Douglas glanced up at the lit window of Monica's apartment, where his sister and niece now slept. "Really try," she had said. 3 simple words loaded with meaning, with weight, and that was exactly what he intended to do. The morning sun filtered through the gaps in the hospital curtains, creating golden patterns on the linoleum floor. Douglas had arrived early, bringing coffee and muffins from a bakery he'd discovered 2 blocks away. The doctors had significantly reduced Nina's medication during the night, expecting her to fully wake that day, more alert than during her brief periods of consciousness in the previous days. Monica slept in the chair next to the bed, the blue blanket covering her legs. Even in sleep, she looked exhausted, her face etched with accumulated fatigue. Douglas set the coffee on the bedside table and quietly took his usual seat in the corner, not wanting to wake her. The days in the hospital had established a routine between them, a careful dance of constant but respectful presence. A slight movement on the bed caught his attention. Nina turned her head, her fingers twitching. Douglas stood up, unsure whether to call Monica or a nurse. Before he could decide, the girl's eyes opened, brown like her mother's, still drowsy, but more alert than at any time since the accident. Nina blinked a few times, adjusting to the light. Her gaze roamed the room, stopping on Monica, still asleep, and finally on Douglas, standing nearby, motionless. "Mum," she called softly, her voice small and hoarse from disuse. Monica woke immediately, years of maternal instinct triumphing over exhaustion. "Nina? I'm here, honey." She leaned over the bed, stroking her daughter's hair. "How are you feeling?" "Thirsty," Nina replied. "And hungry." Monica laughed, a sound of pure relief. "That's great. I'll call the nurse to get you some water and see what you can eat." While Monica pressed the call button, Nina continued watching Douglas, curiosity plain on her face. He smiled at her, trying to seem reassuring, but kept a respectful distance. "Mom," Nina finally said, pointing at Douglas, "who is he?" Monica glanced at her brother, then back at her daughter. There was a brief hesitation in her eyes, as if she were deciding how to explain the complexity to a 7-year-old. "He's your uncle," she said at last. "He saved your life." Nina frowned, processing the information. "My uncle." "Yes, my brother, Uncle Douglas." The girl kept looking at Douglas with growing curiosity. "I didn't know I had an uncle." The simplicity of her statement hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Douglas felt the weight of his absence, the years lost, the connection that could have been. "He got you out of the car after the accident," Monica continued gently. "He stayed with us here in the hospital every day." Nina seemed to consider that, her eyes still on Douglas. "You're my mum's brother." Douglas took a step closer, keeping his voice soft. "Yes, I am. I'm her older brother." "Why have I never seen you before?" The directness of the question, so typical of a child, hit Douglas hard. He looked at Monica, unsure how to respond. "I lived very far away," he finally said, "and I worked too much." "That was my mistake." Nina accepted the explanation with a child's ease, moving on to the next logical question. "But now you came back?" Douglas moved closer to the bed, feeling strangely nervous under his niece's scrutiny. "Yes, I came back. If it's all right with you and your mom." Nina glanced at Monica for confirmation. Monica nodded slightly. Douglas leaned in a bit, meeting his niece's gaze. "Hi, Nina. I'm Uncle Doug. Is it okay if I stay here with you?" A moment of silence as the girl studied him. Then, slowly, a small smile appeared on her pale face. A simple smile, free of judgment or reservations. The kind of acceptance children offer so freely. "Okay," she said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Douglas felt a strange warmth in his chest, something expanding, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. The simplicity of Nina's acceptance, the small smile, the way Monica hadn't contradicted the idea that he would stay. It was as if, after weeks adrift, he had finally found a harbor, a place. A nurse entered at that moment, delighted to see Nina awake and alert. A flurry of activity followed, vital signs, adjusting the bed, offering water in small sips, discussing which foods Nina could tolerate. The following days passed in a blur of activity. Nina recovered visibly by the hour, her strength and personality emerging as the sedation wore off. Douglas discovered his niece was witty, curious, and surprisingly determined for someone so young. "She's always been like that," Monica remarked, when Nina insisted on trying to walk on her own to the bathroom, against the nurse's advice. "Stubborn as a mule." "Reminds me of someone I know," Douglas said with a half-smile. Monica feigned indignation, but there was a sparkle in her eyes. "I have no idea what you're talking about." Finally, the big day came. Nina was discharged, with a list of instructions for care and medication. Douglas helped carry the bags, while the nurse pushed Nina's wheelchair to the hospital exit. "I don't need this," the girl complained. "I can walk by myself. Hospital rules," the nurse said firmly. "All patients leave in a wheelchair." Once outside, Monica settled Nina into a taxi while Douglas stowed their belongings in the trunk. The ride to the apartment was full of the girl's excited commentary, pointing at familiar places, talking about how different everything seemed after so much time in the hospital. At the building, Nina insisted on climbing the stairs on her own, though slowly, with Monica firmly holding her hand. Douglas followed behind, carrying the bags, noticing the determination in his niece's every step. "Finally!" Nina exclaimed when Monica opened the apartment door. "I'm home!" The happiness in her voice made Douglas smile. He lingered at the entrance, unsure whether he should step inside or if his role ended there. Nina solved the dilemma. "Come on in, Uncle Doug. I want to show you my room." Monica raised an eyebrow at her brother, a faint smile on her lips. "Looks like you have a guided tour scheduled." Douglas entered, placing the bags in the living room. The apartment was small but cozy, with simple, well-kept furniture. He noticed details he hadn't before: photos on the walls, plants in corners, books stacked on makeshift shelves. A home, not just a place to live. "My room is this way," Nina announced, leading him down the hallway, though her pace was slow and careful. Monica followed, ready to help if Nina needed support. "Not too long, Nina. You need to rest." The girl's room was painted a light green with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling, a bed with a colorful quilt, shelves filled with books and toys, drawings taped to the walls. It was the room of a child who was loved and encouraged to express her personality. "It's really cool," Douglas commented, genuinely impressed. Who put up the stars on the ceiling? My dad, Nina answered softly. He said that way I could see the sky even if it was cloudy. A brief silence followed the mention of Peter. Monica gently touched her daughter's shoulder. He had a great idea, she said kindly. And now you're home to see them again. Nina nodded, the momentary sadness quickly replaced by excitement as she showed her uncle her treasures. Look at my rock collection and my books. This one is my favorite, about a girl who becomes friends with a dragon. Douglas listened attentively, fascinated by the window into his niece's world. After a few minutes, Monica intervened gently. I think it's time you rested, Nina. You've had a busy day. The girl pouted, but was clearly tired. Is Uncle Doug staying? Monica glanced at her brother. If he wants to, he can stay for dinner. I'd love to, Douglas said quickly. Monica helped Nina settle in for a nap and returned to the living room, where Douglas waited, trying not to appear out of place. She likes you, Monica commented, heading to the kitchen. Want some tea? Yes, please. Douglas followed her, noticing the flickering light over the sink. Monica saw his gaze. It's been like that for weeks, she explained. Peter was going to fix it, but her voice faltered slightly. I'm still not used to the idea that I have to handle these things on my own now. I can take a look, Douglas offered. I know some basic electrical work. Monica looked surprised. You, the big executive? Douglas grinned. Believe it or not, I was once young and broke. Learned to fix a few things. Monica pointed to a small toolbox under the sink. Go ahead. While the water heated, Douglas examined the light, finding a loose contact that was easy to fix. The flickering stopped, shining steadily. Impressive, Monica said, handing him a cup of tea. What else can you do? There was a faintly teasing tone in her voice, reminiscent of their old sibling dynamic. I'm a man of many talents, he replied with mock solemnity. Monica laughed, a light sound that made Douglas realize how much he had missed it. The afternoon passed peacefully. Nina woke from her nap feeling hungry. Douglas offered to go grocery shopping, as the fridge was nearly empty after the hospital stay. I can make a list, Monica said. No need, Douglas replied. Just tell me what you both like to eat. While Monica described Nina's favorite foods and their basic needs, Douglas listened carefully, memorizing every detail. It wasn't just a shopping list. It was a map of their daily life, the small things that made their world work. When he returned, carrying multiple heavy bags, he found Nina settled on the sofa with a book, looking tired but content. Monica helped him put everything away, seeming slightly embarrassed when he insisted on paying for it all. You're doing so much already, Douglas. It's the least I can do, he said simply. Together they prepared a simple dinner, homemade soup and fresh bread he'd bought at the bakery. Nina watched from the kitchen table, recounting school stories and occasionally asking Douglas about his work. During dinner, Douglas noticed the faucet was leaking. Without comment, after they finished, he grabbed the toolbox again and replaced the worn washer. You don't have to fix everything, Monica said, watching. I don't mind, he replied, testing the faucet to make sure the drip had stopped. I like being useful. It was true, he realized with surprise. There was something deeply satisfying about repairing small things, about helping in tangible, immediate ways. So much of his career was abstract, money moving digitally, contracts on paper, power and influence in boardrooms. Here in this small apartment, a fixed faucet was a real accomplishment, a gesture that meant something in the real world. After dinner, he insisted on washing the dishes while Monica helped Nina with her nightly bath and medication. Moving around the little kitchen, Douglas felt an unfamiliar sense of peace. He didn't evaluate the space, mentally calculate how much it would cost to renovate or improve it. For the first time in his adult life, he wasn't trying to exert control over an environment, wasn't mentally rearranging, upgrading, dominating. He was simply helping, serving without expectation, without a hidden agenda, carrying bags, fixing a light, washing dishes, small tasks that somehow felt more meaningful than all the mergers and acquisitions he had ever negotiated. When Monica returned, she found him putting away the last of the dishes. She watched him silently for a moment. Nina is asking if you'd like to say goodnight, she finally said. Douglas followed her to the bedroom, where Nina lay nestled among pillows, Bunny clutched tightly. "Thanks for dinner, Uncle Doug," she said drowsily. "And for bringing Bunny from the hospital." "It was my pleasure," he replied, surprised at the surge of emotion he felt at hearing Uncle Doug spoken so naturally. "Will you come back tomorrow?" He looked at Monica, uncertain. "We'll see," Monica said, sparing him from a direct answer. "Now get some sleep." They went back to the living room, where Douglas picked up his coat, getting ready to leave. "She's warmed up to you fast," Monica remarked. "She's usually more reserved around strangers." "I'm not exactly a stranger," Douglas said. "I'm her uncle," Monica nodded, something softening in her expression. "Yes, you are." At the door, Douglas hesitated. "Am I really welcome tomorrow? I don't want to intrude." "Nina would be disappointed if you didn't come," Monica replied. "And honestly, the help is nice." It was a significant admission from someone as independent as his sister. "I'll be here," he promised. As he descended the stairs, Douglas felt a strange lightness, almost unfamiliar. Monica's apartment walls weren't lined with marble. The furniture wasn't designer. The view wasn't spectacular like his penthouse. But there was something in that home that his luxurious apartment had never had. Something he now understood he'd been searching for without knowing: belonging, purpose, connection. For a moment, tidying the kitchen, hearing Nina's stories, fixing small broken things, he had felt he truly had a place, not as an owner, controller, or benefactor, but as part of something bigger than himself, as someone who served without being asked, who contributed without seeking credit. That, Douglas realized as he walked into the moonlit night, said more than any words ever could. The sky was painted grey, neither threatening rain nor promising sun. Fitting, Douglas thought, as he walked through the iron gates of the cemetery. A neutral day for a visit he had postponed for 3 years. He carried a small bouquet of white lilies, his mother's favorite flowers. There had always been a vase of them on the living room table when he was a child, their gentle scent filling the house. A house she had held together with constant effort and silent dignity after his father left. The cemetery was quiet that Tuesday morning. Only a few other visitors, bending over headstones in distant sections. Douglas followed the stone walkway, occasionally checking the small map the gate attendant had given him. Section E, Row 12, Plot 38. As he walked, he thought about how his life had changed over the last few weeks. The accident, the reunion with Monica, the discovery of Nina, the slow rebuilding of something he had believed lost forever. His routine, once dominated by meetings and deals, now included dinners at his sister's modest apartment, small repairs around the house, bedtime stories for his niece. Yesterday, Monica had mentioned their mother during dinner. Nothing elaborate, just a comment about how Nina had inherited her grandmother's talent for drawing. It was the first time they spoke of her without accusation, without the specter of Douglas's absence at the funeral. She would have adored Nina, Monica had said. Yes, Douglas had replied, she really would have. That was the moment he decided it was time to face what he'd avoided for so long. Now standing before a simple marble headstone, he felt the weight of his cowardice, of his delay. Her name was engraved in elegant letters. Elizabeth Ann Reed, 1955, 2022. Beloved mother, eternal light. Douglas stood in silence for a long moment, just looking at the stone, letting reality sink in. His mother was there, beneath his feet. The woman who had raised him, who had believed in him when no one else did, who had kept the family together after his father left. The woman whose final days he had ignored, too wrapped up in his own self-importance. He knelt on the damp grass, not caring about the moisture seeping into his expensive trousers. He placed the flowers in the small vase set into the headstone's base, arranging them carefully. Such a small gesture, so inadequate. I took too long, he began quietly, his words almost lost in the gentle breeze. But I came. I'm sorry I didn't spend more time with you. Sorry I only just got here. His voice wavered. Douglas took a deep breath, feeling a tight knot in his throat. He had rehearsed what to say in his mind, but now the words felt small, too weak to carry the weight of his regret. I was arrogant, greedy. Each word was difficult, as though saying them out loud made them more real. And I lost what matters most in life, my family. A bird sang in a nearby tree, its clear note cutting through the cemetery's silence. Douglas watched it for a moment before continuing. I'm trying to fix things, though. The usual formality of his language slipped away, replaced by something simpler, how he spoke when he was just Elizabeth's son, not the powerful Douglas Reed. I saved my niece in an accident. I got close to Monica again. She's giving me a chance. The wind gently ruffled the lily's petals. Douglas pictured his mother tending the garden in their old backyard, her hands always busy, always creating beauty even in hard times. Nina's 7 now. She's as smart as Monica, with the same stubborn chin that runs in our family. A slight smile touched his lips, despite the pain. You would have loved her, Mom. She asks questions all the time, draws beautifully, collects rocks, of all possible treasures. He paused, realizing he was rambling.